gets the hay at affordable prices. Another aspect which was documented recently in the media was this gentleman who capitalized on the current drought. He buys hay at 90 shillings in Kajiado and sells it at 500 shillings in Lamu. Basically, he saved a small segment, actually less than 1% of those animals. Yet, if it was a continuous running business, which is well structured, that could have made was the Kajiado, the Kajiado supplier could have got a high markup of his hay. He sees a reason to keep on producing hay. And the farmer in Lamu, the livestock farmer in Lamu gets that hay at a price not more than 250, maximum 300, so that a greater spectrum of these farmers are able to afford this hay, so that many animals are saved in the process. When done, I'm seeing two aspects we have to deploy strongly going forward in terms of market systems and financial systems to streamline or to intervene in drought and streamline the livestock business in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Chuma. And I want to bring in Nicholas, who's the Chief Executive Officer of KEMLEC. That's the Meat and Livestock Exporters Industry Council. And for you, who in your space of operation, you deal with a lot of, foreign markets, international, and there's that connection. There are a lot of, let me actually begin by asking about something that Isaac Kalua said. He had an article he did sometime in January 2020, and let me quote him. He says, Kenya exports about 6,000 goats in form of mutton to UAE daily, against a daily potential export market of 25,000 goats. That's about a quarter only. If our government, in conjunction with Meat and Livestock Exporters Industry Council of Kenya, focuses on getting a lasting solution, our youth can easily unleash our full potential. The numbers may have changed because that was based on January 2020, but maybe if you could just comment on this in regards to just creating opportunities, especially for the youth, when we're having a big challenge of unemployment. Because then how it fits into this conversation is that it helps us in having the manpower and the capacity to meet the demand.
Well, I believe the first thing is that as Kenya, we need to understand, we need to trickle that information down the value chain for the producers to understand what the export markets require. Because every market requires a different specification in terms of age of animal, gender of animal, the kgs, and pretty much you find whatever Egypt wants is not what Saudi Arabia wants. Whatever Dubai wants is not what Kuwait wants. So that's where we begin with. You produce for the market, not produce and then look for a market. I think that's what we've been doing. And like currently, we are exporting about 25 tons per day, actually 23 tons per day on average to UAE. Their demand from Kenya is minimum 60 tons per day. It's our biggest market, followed by Saudi, followed by Qatar, then Bahrain, then Kuwait. We have not been exporting much to Egypt because the prices they require, we are not able to produce. As a country, we are not able to compete with Turkey and India, which can produce at $2 per kilo. That's for beef. So you find that because of that fact, we are exporting more of goat and sheep, and an order here and there for beef and camel meat. The other thing is that on the same issue of competitiveness in terms of like what Kenya produces, you find Tanzania, they are doing better than us, pretty much because their climatic conditions allow them to produce at low prices. And also the fact that they have adequate rainfall the whole of the year, throughout the year. Labor is cheaper there than Kenya by far, and also vegetation. And animal feeds is another issue. As a country, we are not in the best position to produce, adequate amounts of animal feeds. you found there was a ban from Zambia on soya, which affected prices immediately. So you find in Kenya, the minute it rains, prices go up. By evening, the price of a goat has gone up. And then there's the issue of culture. What the market requires on average is 9 months for goat and sheep, maximum of 9 months, at between 30 and 40 kgs live weight. For us to be able to produce that, we need to work on feedlots. And majority of the national feedlots are not operational. I had mentioned earlier in a previous discussion that Saudi, they have given us an order. We have a standing order for Saudi of 1.2 million heads per year and 2.5 million for the annual Hajj. We have not been able to meet that, but you know, the government set aside 3.1 billion for the Lamu quarantine station. So if we can do more on leasing out these public land to private, you know, institutions, then we'll be able to meet such demand. That is before we even go to the existing requests from US and UK for our animals.
Okay, and I want to bring a candle on that. We're hearing all this demand, and there's also the concern of supplying quality livestock. So what I want to know from you, first of all, KMC, what percentage of your products are for the international market vis-a-vis the local market, and what, from where you sit, needs to be done to ensure that we have quality livestock? Because you can churn out, you know, a lot of meat, but it may not meet the standards, and we've had standards that are very significant concern throughout the conversations.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan, on that. Let me start with the international market. As you all know, the Kenya Meat Commission was reopened in April. And the first thing we did was to come up with a 5-year business plan, because initially we found out that there was no business strategy within the commission. And our starting point was, first of all, to acquire the local market and stabilize that market. Going forward now, we are looking outwards to the international market. We have had a lot of inquiries from overseas. We have visited other foreign countries that have interests. But on the part of value addition, in terms of corned beef, we have signed a contract with South Sudan at the moment to supply them with 280,000 cans of corned beef per month. And that is our starting point as far as the acquisition of the international market. On the other side of quality, first of all, I would like to say that about 15,000 livestock that we have slaughtered since we reopened in April. We have had condemnation. The leading counties are from Narok and parts of Kajiado, where in terms of offals we have 75 to 95% condemnation rate, and to be followed by some other counties in northeastern of 15 to 25%, such as Garissa and Marsabit. But then what we are doing ourselves now, which is within our reach, is that we are developing our almost 3,000-acre ranch, which is behind Portland Cement Factory, so that we have started restocking animals there, so that we can achieve the 21 days quarantine that is required. Then we ensure that the livestock that we drive to our slaughterhouse or to the abattoir are those ones that are free of diseases. And that's what we are doing at the moment. And then when they get to the pens, the holding pens, we stabilize them, to distress them for between 12 to 24 hours. Then we drive them to the slaughterhouse. And of course, through the slaughter process, the issue of bleeding, we ensure they bleed well, because the microbes, they thrive in the blood. And then all the way, finishing the animal and then getting them to the chillers to ensure that, as Professor Kangede talked about, to ensure that the rigor mortis process, that is the loosening of the muscles, and therefore the conversion of the muscles into the meat, takes place within the 12 to 24 hours in the chillers. And after that, we start now quartering and issuing, distributing the meat. So in that way, we ensure that our products are of a high quality. And of course, we have oversight of meat inspectors from the Directorate of Veterinary Services, who are always with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Colonel. And I want to bring back Dr. Chuma. When we had a brief yesterday, and you pointed out that the economy lost 1 trillion shillings and 70% of the loss was in the livestock sector. That came up during the briefing at end. What should we do to shield this important sector from such losses? Because as we've heard across the conversations today, what is clear, one of the things that's clear is that it's a very important sector which is like a sleeping giant. But you see it is also having gigantic hits when we have losses. So how do we shield it from that, from this magnitude of losses?
Thank you. I think one clear way of trying to minimize those losses, and it has been said consistently from the minister's speech, the PSC's comments, and previous discussions, is to protect, to get an insurance scheme for these animals. But that insurance scheme must be coupled with availability of the necessary inputs. What I mean inputs here, I mean the animal feeds, water availability, such that if we insure these animals against drought, we have now insured less than 2% of those animals. And from the previous droughts, where those animals were insured, we have registered very impressive performance in terms of protecting them, cushioning them against drought. At least we make sure they survive. Now, if we go to the next step, like currently the government is trying to lay strategies on how to upscale this insurance strategy, I will imagine that if only we get up to 30% of these animals being protected through insurance, and a drought comes in, and we make the insurance payouts, what will happen is we shall buy all the hay in the country within 2 weeks. And again, we shall now get to another problem of lack of inputs again to save the same animals. So it has to be a well-rounded approach, where as you protect the animals against drought through insurance schemes, you also have to promote massive hay production, so that the producers, the livestock producers, are get a continuous supply of this hay, and this hay is supplied to them at reasonable prices, which is negotiated, and to up the producers' game in the negotiation, we need them into groups so that they have a higher bargaining power. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I'll invite the gentleman, in case you would want to comment on something that another one of the panelists has been asked, just let me know and we could jump in, though we are beginning to draw to a close. And Nicholas, some of the things that we are hearing here as solutions to the circumstances we find ourselves in as a country, etc., for some people may seem a bit tedious, and sadly Kenyans to some extent are known for being more comfortable with the shortcuts. So there seems there's a need to unschool people and reschool them with a new way of doing things, especially when it may look like it's going to be more tedious, but because it is more, it's more demanding of that thoroughness when you talk about food safety. Do you have any kind of initiatives around this, of just trying to and insist on people not trying to circumvent the system?
Well, in terms of feeding the animal for the market, there's no shortcut about that. There's no shortcut around water, feeds, and vaccinations. But the thing I was talking about is, in terms of the culture, we need to educate the pastoralist communities more that they don't need to wait for the animal to reach maturity for them to sell to us. Because for the export market, they're looking at a younger, leaner, and tender animal. But for the local market, anything goes. The local market is much, much bigger. But the minute you understand that if you consume a 9-month goat that has reached 40 kilos, it's softer, then we can begin to understand. Because Kenyans, they are looking for the biggest goat in the market. They think
Yes, because you feel you're going to get value for your money. Ile mbuzi kubwa ndio mzuri.
You will not be able to chew that meat. Unless you want to develop stronger jaws. It's not meat, it's all muscles.
So that actually just shows there's a disconnect between the wider public and those of you who are in the industry and have all this information, because one, it's a cultural thing in terms of just the culture of the bigger it is, the more value I get out of it. But there's also those who, I think even Dr. has mentioned, in regards to those who have the cultural dynamic, like you've also mentioned, of you want to keep your cow, you want to, like, you're holding it until it's really needed. And I mean, if you've had any opportunity to try and engage pastoralists, for instance, what is the experience? Because for them it's a source of pride and wealth sometimes. More actually, it generally is.
Well, for the younger men and women in the pastoralist communities, they are adopting. But some of them, they are traditionalists. And even for the consumers, telling a Kenyan that the 4-year goat that you're consuming has walked from Mombasa to Busia and come back to Nairobi and then you're eating it, it's like a bouncer, heavy muscles. It's just muscles. That animal has trekked, it has undergone a lot of suffering. And Kenya, we have what we call cyclic droughts. Every 2 years, we have a drought. So that animal was very healthy in the first year. The second year, it was very emaciated. The third year, it was very healthy. The fourth year, it was very emaciated. And maybe there was a bit of climate change, and it was able to get fat and go to the market. So you're consuming a 4-year, 5-year-old goat. You don't expect it to be soft. And for cattle, it's even worse. And whatever it eats along the way, when it's being tracked, looking for feeds, it's not something you would want to put in your body. But, there are those opportunities by, the development partners. I can see their presence here. I can see 3 of them here. They are doing a lot in the outreach areas, whatever we call, the northern frontier counties, because that's where most of the livestock comes from.
So you're saying, just for the avoidance of assumption or doubt, whenever I go somewhere and I'm eating meat and I find it's very hard, it's not necessarily that the guy cooking is an amateur cook. It could be that it's an old animal.
Definitely. Kenyans, we eat very old animals. For cattle, for sheep, for goats. Okay, for sheep, we don't eat a lot in Kenya. But mutton is actually something we need to promote as Kenyans, because we have a lot of sheep, but we don't have a market for it. Except for where, maybe there are some traders who slaughter who slaughter sheep and lie to you that it's a goat. And again, some people cannot even tell the difference. And the other issue is the male animal. I know Professor Kangede might have mentioned that it's sweeter than the female animal. The female animals should be, for breeding purposes. Then the males, you can churn them out at below 1 year. So if you're able to entrench this information into the Kenyan consumers' minds and into the communities, the pastoral communities, and the younger, men and women within the pastoral communities, so that they can change that culture. And it's a culture that is hard to change because, first of all, in these communities, animals are treated as wealth. the way in some communities land is treated as wealth. So when you're given animals by your father as inheritance, you are not supposed to sell them.
Okay, thank you. So Dr. I wanted to add something to that.
Yes, I wanted to add my voice on the culture aspect and the livestock production. What you get as meat in our butcheries is what tells you what the producer was producing for. And I feel at times the culture is accused unnecessarily because pastorists, they are rational people. In actual fact, something which does not get a lot of public discourse is you have to appreciate majority of pastorists are apparently some of the very good business people in this country. If I don't want to mention names, but apparently these people are watching these animals die in large numbers, yet those animals could have been offloaded in the market. What is he not? Why is he or she not offloading at the right time? Basically, several things come in here, and I see is a person who has a produce, but he doesn't get the value for his produce, so he hopes to hold into it. Yeah, because every other shopping market, marketplace you go, especially in northern Kenya, and the first thing they will tell you is "Hakuna soko ya mifugo," there is no market for our animals. What they mean literally is they know how much this animal, the meat is selling in the butcheries and in Nairobi, and what the price they are being offered there, so they hoped to hold on to it. So for me is let us work on the market, and the culture, it will fix itself. If this pastorist knows you get the right price for his effort, you will be encouraged to release this animal at the time the consumer wants it. But provided that that animal is being sold at 20,000 in Wajir, and in Nairobi in Dagoretti it will sell 70,000, you will expect them to keep on holding these animals further. So let us work on the marketing systems. Let us extend financial support to these people, organize them into groups so that we address this issue of consistency. In the process, we shall encourage them to give the market the animal which the market wants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just want a quick round of closing comments, and I'll begin with you, Colonel. And it's a question I had asked on the previous panel, and I think it's important to also pick it up here. From your point of view, how do we bring down the price of meat? Because, like we're saying, meat has been taken many times to be almost an elite thing to some people. You know, there are people who will say, and it's a reality, they'll only eat watakula nyama Christmas, you know. So when even it becomes like a point of banter that, makulanga nyama every day, you know, how we can move from that to having meat being more affordable. What do you think needs to be done to get us to a point where it's not as expensive as it is?
Yes, Dan, I think according to me, the first thing that I think makes meat expensive is, of course, the cost of production of the cattle themselves. That is, it takes long to grow. And then, of course, also considering that the abattoirs, they are located, most of them are located here in Nairobi. So the cost, that cost of production. So I think the first thing that probably we need to do is to encourage livestock producers to consider this as a business, as a commercial venture, and therefore go into feedlot. Because in a feedlot system, this is where you have a nutrition, customized nutrition, depending on the weight of the animal. You take that animal through a nutrition system, and therefore you harvest earlier. You know, you get to harvest the animal earlier. And therefore, you see, with that kind of system, we are able to produce more animals within the shortest time, and therefore more animals in the market. And that can probably bring down the price of meat. And of course, the other thing which we have in our plan, in our business plan, is to have abattoirs in strategic locations in the country. Like now we have Kibarani in Mombasa will be up and running next month. And then we are looking at other areas where we have large population of livestock in the country. And that way, we can be able to slaughter those animals within those localities and then transport transport the meat in refrigerated trucks to the market. And that way, we'll try and bring down the cost of meat.
Thank you very much, Kanu. Daktari?
I see reducing the price of meat in the butcheries will come through consistent supply of meat into these outlets. And that will only come if the producer is adequately protected to produce his animal and compensated adequately to get encouraged to produce more animals. Currently, the country, it has been severally said, it is meat deficient. If we close our borders with the Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, not Sudan, Tanzania across here, we are importing meat. And as long as we keep on importing this meat, the prices will continue being high. So basically, let us support our producers to give us the animal and the meat we want by supporting them on their areas of weakness, so that they keep on giving us the right animals we want, the right numbers of animals. In the process, and also I forgot to mention a very big culprit in the whole process of meat pricing, called the broker. From the farm gate up to the butchery, you can count about 5 brokers in that system. And if you organize these producers into groups or cooperatives, or whatever name you want to give them, you give them the leverage over these brokers, that the broker will not end up making more money than the producer, as we are seeing it today. So all that price of the broker is always loaded to the consumer. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Well, on the same story of how the animal crosses the border at 18,000 Kenya shillings, and gets to Nairobi at 80,000 Kenya shillings. It's value chain dynamics. I mean, there's someone who is making money through the whole journey. So first of all, if you were able to use a train to get the animal from Marsabit to Nairobi the same day, then we would save a lot of money along the way. Because when you track the animal, when you use a lorry to get the animal from Marsabit to Nairobi, there are so many things you pay along the way, legally and otherwise. And that's how the animal becomes expensive. People assume that brokers are making the 60,000 price difference. No, there's a lot of, the counties are making some money, the transporters are making some money, the brokers are making some money, everyone is making some money. So the thing is, first of all, we understand as Kenya, the fact that we lie along the equator, we will not be able to produce soya competitively, even in the next 200 years. So we need to look for solutions. Either we negotiate with Zambia for a price floor or a price ceiling for soya, and then we become the country that uptakes its soya. Or we look for alternatives. And by alternatives, I mean we look at feed formulation, or what people call, the recipe for the animal feeds. And then we look at the components that go into the animal feeds, and we see which alternatives are cheaper for that. Because we have to move with the times. If technology is changing, we have to change. So, and lastly, the issue of water. If we don't have enough water for our animals, then, when we give them hay, watanyongwa, they need water. I mean, just like human beings need water. So it's to calculate what goes into an animal from birth to slaughter, and look at those costs and try to bring them down, objectively.
All right, and allow me, if you may just that before I just want to get some clearer picture of how, and I know you've partly explained it, but I don't know which of you would just like to give me a bit more of a granulated explanation of how a cow will move from 18,000 to 80,000 by the time it gets to Nairobi. I know it's mentioned, I think we just may need some more expounding on that, just because that's a significant increment. That's more than 4 times of what it was. So you've mentioned the counties along the way will get some of the fees. We've got transport costs. What else is there? I just feel I got stuck there for a bit just by hearing that kind of a thing. Maybe Dr. you can tell us.
Yes, it's an interesting scenario, and it's a typical market failure manifestation. Market failure is used by economists to show unstructured or unstructured market system. A good example is Garissa market, for example. That animal comes from the village. Before it reaches the Garissa market, it finds a guy waiting for it about 10 kilometers from the market. He buys it at, it was bought from the farmer at that 18,000. He buys it at 25,000. He comes to the market. He will sell it to a second broker who will buy it at 40,000. So the last guy who will put in a truck to bring it here in Nairobi buys it at 50, and now topping up, adding up on his transport and his profit, it's 80.
Wow. I think that's a point to ponder. How you come from 18 to 80 for that one animal. And the thing is, you find some of these guys are making more than the farmer himself. I guess it's a good point to end it. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your insight on this conversation. Yes, let's appreciate them alongside all the other panelists who are here before, as well as the other presenters. We've had Colonel K. Biwott, who's the Chief Operations Officer and the Deputy Managing Commissioner at the Kenya Meat Commission. I've also had Dr. Richard Chuma from the State Department of Livestock, and we've had Nicholas Ngahu, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Meat and Livestock Exporters Industry Council, that's KEMLIC, who've been talking to us about livestock producers and rising demand. And we've closed with the aspect of pricing, which is quite dumbfounding. So we have completed our panel discussions for the day, but we still have the exhibitors who are still there. Please make sure you go and network, get more insights, see where you can invest, see where you can partner. Some of the things that have come up from these discussions you could hear the tone of the unity. If you come, together, even Dr. mentioned here, be it circles or whatever, groupings you'd want to name them as. That is what I believe has also given KEMLIC that kind of prominence and ability to do a lot more because of coming together. So this is the platform has been provided for us to come together and make the best of it, so that this sleeping giant can wake up and can stop incurring these gigantic losses that we are hearing. So thank you very much once again, gentlemen and ladies who have also been part of this. So we welcome you to enjoy yourselves, the cuisine, and to enjoy yourselves and enjoy the cuisines here that have been provided here, because there's so much promise that we have had being shared here today. There's a lot to learn even when it comes to how you handle your food. You've been told when you go to the butchery, I've had people saying the one which you see with flies, it shows that you're ndio mzuri. The fly is showing you there's some sense of goodness there. So I'd want to just at this point, I beg your pardon, before we close, I'm advised that there's a representative of the county government of Kajiado who has joined us. I will release you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being part of this. There is a county executive committee member from the county of Kajiado, I am advised. If he's here, if he could just come up and he's going to, she, I beg your pardon, is going to speak on behalf of the county government of Kajiado. And contextually, Kajiado is one which is very big on... Kajiado is one which is big on livestock and the like, so I will just invite you to just make your remark as we come to a close.
Thank you. My concerns will be to, one, the comments that were made by Colonel, the Managing Director of KMC, on the issues of, was that animal diseases that, or condemned animals that go to KMC. Number one, I need to cite issues of intergovernmental coordination in regard to that, and that probably the animals that he claims come from Narok and Kajiado County could actually be directly from Jumuiya ya Muungano wa Tanzania. So that then before they condemn Kajiado and Narok, they must verify and ensure that they have done proper traceability of the livestock. And that number two, and I could hear the panelists having discussed issues of pricing, and to say that KMC so far has not been able to offer very good prices. But also, this livestock diseases are a big challenge to all of us. One of the main issues for those of us who are border counties have a lot of disease load that we get from across the borders. And so this is a call to the DVC, and I'm glad that they are here and we've been in discussions with the counties, that we have a coordinated system of control of diseases. Because what happens currently is that each county deals with livestock diseases on their own, but coordinated ways of dealing with livestock diseases is an issue, and therefore affects trade of meat. I listened to Dr. Njoroge, and I was impressed by the knowledge he has on particularly issues of livestock feed. And this is the discussion that this country should be having now, because it is time that we discussed livestock feed so that our pastoralists can be able to beat issues of climate change. Talking about that, at the moment, drought has been declared a national disaster. And I will tell you that in Kajiado, we have, currently, the hay producers of Kajiado have stock of about 1 million bales that are not finding market. And we see animals dying in other counties, but we have an issue of coordination. So as Dr. Njoroge and the Daktari from DVC had said, we need to improve on coordination. I would also like to say that the Meat Training Institute has been an important institute to the counties, particularly the county government of Kajiado. We have been able to train all our abattoir owners, our abattoir staff, and our butchers on short courses on meat handling. And therefore, what remains as a challenge is feed, as I say again. And I could hear someone say, talk about Malawi and getting soya from Malawi. Talk about Tanzania and getting sunflower from Tanzania. What is wrong? Why can't Kenya produce soya? Why can't Kenya produce, for example, sunflower? We have land, we have soil. Tanzania is just across. You know, sisi tunashikana na mkoa wa Arusha. Wanapanda hiyo, mbona Kenya hawapandi? Probably the issue could be market. And therefore, government should just relook and see why it is that we are not able to produce.
Madam Koina, I beg to interject at this point, because we are a bit short of time, but we do appreciate your contribution. There's some good points you've raised. This is Jacqueline Coyne. She's the County Executive Committee member for Agriculture, Veterinary Services, Fisheries and Irrigation in the County Government of Kajiado. Thank you for lending us your insight, especially as a county that is big on the discussion we're having and on the livestock sector. Thank you for your time. We unfortunately have run out of time, but once again, like I was saying, feel free to visit the exhibition stalls. Which have got the different players along the value chain when it comes to the meat conversation, and there'll be a lot to learn. Make sure you get to sample some meat from different sources. I've actually seen there's rabbit meat being grilled there. It's something I want to go and try out. So please also be part of this, and thank you very much. My name is Dan Mwangi. Have yourselves a great afternoon, and please enjoy the Nyama.